Dumelang. Welcome to Face the Nation. My name is Clement Manyatela. Great to have you with us here on SABC News. On the show tonight, why is Advocate Dali Mpofu only leaving the EFF now if he was part and parcel of the formation of the MK party? The EFF leader Julius Malema has now responded to Mpofu's decision to quit the party, confirming that Mpofu wanted the EFF to cease to exist and be part of an organization led by Jacob Zuma. Advocate Dali Mpofu returns to Face the Nation tonight. And then later, is the GNU ever going to be able to tame the DA Federal Council Chair, Helen Zille? Because there are more and more parties in the GNU that are unhappy about the comments she's been making publicly, with the recent one being that most of the business community really wanted the DA to prop up President Cyril Ramaphosa. The ANC has now dared the DA to leave the GNU if it wants, or stop undermining the party and trying to weaken it from within. The ANC's first Deputy Secretary General, Nomvula Mokonyane, speaks to us tonight. But first, my comment. So it was breaking news very early this morning. Advocate Dali Mpofu has become the latest politician to cross the floor from the EFF to the MK party. There are some people who were shocked by this move, but there were others, including myself, who were not really surprised by that revelation this morning. In fact, we saw it coming, which is why the last time I invited Dali Mpofu on this show, which is about 2 months ago, after Floyd Shivambu left the EFF, I asked him this question. One of the things was that you are the one that actually negotiated for Floyd Shivambu to get that pathway into the MK party, given your already existing relationship with the former president, Jacob Zuma. How do you respond to an assertion like that?
No, we don't have to respond to that. I mean, I've never, one of the things I've seen in the last 5 days is so many people who are experts on us. You know, even now I was coming here, someone was saying, no, this is what Julius is thinking. No, this is what this one is thinking. How do they know how we're thinking? No, I'm not worried about those kinds of things. That's what happens in politics. There's always be those kinds of rumors. What is crucial is that the organization must position itself within Parliament, outside of Parliament, on the streets of our country, as the alternative to the current crisis that we have been placed in by the so-called GNU.
So that was part of our conversation 2 months ago. But I really wanted to get an emphatic answer from him, and I wanted him to be categorically clear, which is why I repeated my question, and I wanted him to state publicly on record whether he is indeed sticking with the EFF or not. To be clear, you are going to be part of that war. You're not going anywhere. You're still very much part of the EFF.
Well, I'm not just part of the EFF. As the president was saying, the EFF is us. It's something that we have built from nothing. You know, it's not something that you just wake up one day and walk away.
Which is why Julius Malema feels so betrayed by Floyd Shivambu. I mean, even yesterday he said, even last week he said, this is someone who helped co-found this organization.
Absolutely.
Do you see it in your view as a betrayal when you look at someone like Floyd who helped build this organization, as you say, from nothing? Do you see it as a betrayal? Because Julius Malema last night says this is someone who's gone for his own political gains.
Well, you know what, the relationship particularly between those two is well known. I mean, I represented them in 2012 in the ANC disciplinary hearing. And even then, coming from the Youth League, and as he said last week, it was not just a friendship, it was a brotherhood. So it's almost like, as I said, losing somebody who's close to you, or a divorce, or some other loss of that sort. So those kinds of losses either go with a lot of sadness, which is something we felt, or a feeling of betrayal.
Is that how you feel?
In the sense, well, to the extent that we were not taken into the confidence, I do feel that way.
All right, so that's Advocate Dali Mpofu on this show back in August. Now, fast forward 2 months later, he has told my colleague here on the SABC that he has now decided to leave the EFF. After
a lot of soul searching, yeah, I've taken a decision that I will be joining MK. And as I say, I'm joining MK because I believe that it is the vehicle through which we will achieve the much needed black and progressive unity. So I'm doing so not necessarily to reject any other organization. In fact, and of course, Mpofu also revealed that he knew about the formation of the MK party as early as 2022. He says he was part of and parcel of the formation of the MK party. There was a time when former President Zuma and I were the only people who knew about this project of the formation of MK, because we had discussed after the 2022 conference of the ANC very in depth as to what needs to be done, and we had various options, and so this discussion took about 12 months. So by the time you attended the launch in December of MK, this had been a project that was in the pipeline, in the underground, as he revealed, for about 12 months. So that's the context there. The question, though, is why did he not leave then when the MK party was formed? Why now? Or was he hoping that the MK party and the EFF would merge? Whatever the answer is, something is not adding up. Either Dali Mpofu was eating the EFF from within and sort of tried to get the whole plan engineered to convince other leaders to cross the floor to the party that he helped establish, which is the MK party, or he is right in that the EFF leadership knew about the MK party formation and maybe they changed their minds later on and refused plans to merge with the other parties. This is how the EFF leader, Julius Malema, responded to Mpofu's departure earlier today.
We respect his decision and there's nothing we can do about it. He has been there. I know of the work they've been doing. I know of the work he has been doing and all of that. So this has never been a shock to me. It was just about when is it about to happen. It's going to happen anytime, but we just don't know when. So it eventually happened and we're fine.
So what do you think is at play here? What do you make of Advocate Dali Mpofu's decision to quit the EFF? You can send us a WhatsApp voice note now on 078 459 1897. Remember to tell us your name and surname and where you are sending us that voice note from. Alternatively, you can send us an X on SABC. All right, let's start that conversation with Advocate Dali Mpofu, who is back on Face the Nation tonight. Advocate, thank you so much for making time for us.
Always a pleasure. How are you?
I'm good. I must say, I do notice that you're not wearing red today. Every time I've ever had you on this show, you always come clad in your red shirt.
Well, that was a uniform of the EFF, and as you might have heard, I'm not in the EFF anymore.
You know, I was thinking earlier today when I obviously saw the SABC running with the story, and I thought, my goodness, because 2 months ago when you were here, you said, I'm going nowhere, and then boom, you announced that you're out. What happened? What changed?
No, a lot has happened. I'm sure you've heard of the saying that says a week is a long time in politics. Now imagine 2 months there. No, look, on a more serious note, Clement, you know, this is something that really needs, I could see that you're saying you don't understand it. Well, I don't expect you to understand it, The issue is that there are two different phases, and I see everyone is conflating them. There's, let's call it the pre-election phase, So what happened is that there was this idea of what needs to be done in the country, and I've gone through that in that interview with Zwei, which ultimately culminated in the registration, the stuff that's now in the public domain, in around about June, I think, yeah. And then there was the second half of last year, where now the issue was, okay, the party has been formed, now what must happen? And my interest has always been about uniting progressive and black people in particular in general. Even in the EFF, that's one of the roles that I played when we formed the EFF. I went to meet with the PAC. Actually, Andile time I was part of my unit where we were visiting various organizations. Yeah. But coming back to this, we then started a process like that. And I remember specific meetings, one that happened in August. Obviously, this was not above board. August, another one in October, where I chaired a meeting. Former President Zuma addressed leaders that I had invited there. The presidents of the UDM, ATM, the president of the EFF was not there, but he had sent
Floyd
Shivambu and Marshall.
Marshall Dlamini.
Yes. And APC, AZAPO, those types of organizations. Areta was still there, ACT, and so on. So I then presented what I thought would be the projections of what might happen in the May 29 elections. I don't even know if the date was there then. And that it was clear that no party is going to, the stuff that no party was going to get
a clear majority.
Yeah, a clear majority. And my model, which was actually written on paper, was that there'll then be 3 blocks. There'll be the moonshot block, the ANC, and what I termed to be the Patriotic Front, which should have been those groupings. And then the ANC would then be put in a position where it either would have to go with the right wing or with us, right? Okay, fast forward to, let's say, about November, December. Then it becomes clear that, look, time is running out, people are busy, people are worried about the election that's coming. So to cut a long story short, a compromise was reached, which was that, look, let's go, we can't agree on which vehicle, because the EFF people are saying, well, it's fine, but then you must come and collapse under the EFF. The other guys are saying, no, maybe let's have a new thing, and so on, the usual type of discussion. And to the stage where the compromise was that, no, let's then go and contest separately. We'll revisit this whole thing after the elections. And my hope even then was that, even then, in fact, I think I said this specifically, even if we do that, let's at least, at the minimum, have what I called in that paper a voting bloc. In other words, when the so-called GNU discussions were happening, you would then have had the ANC having to deal with us as a bloc, not negotiate with the EFF, negotiate with MK, negotiate with this one,
All right.
And so that was the general idea,
So Julius Malema says the reason he rejected that proposal is because you wanted the EFF to be swallowed and cease to exist, and then it becomes part of this organization that's led by President Jacob Zuma.
No, that's not what happened. Well, it's not. I wanted there to be, what just happened now in Botswana. The party that won the elections was something called the Umbrella for Democratic Change. It's not one organization, it's an umbrella. The only difference is that there they've even tried it many times in previous elections and failed and so on. That's the kind of idea I had.
But who was going to be the leader? Because Julius
doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who was going to be the leader. The issue was that you'd have the umbrella. It didn't even have to have a leader as such, or one leader. Those are nitty-gritties. The issue was about unity. That's the principle. And whether it was going to be done ideally it would be one umbrella body, because you don't want to confuse the electorate by bringing different flags.
So when that project then failed to shape up before the elections, you decide to stick with the EFF. 2 months ago, when I asked you, you said, I'm not going anywhere, I'm here. But then now you've decided to leave. That's why I'm interested to know what happened in the 2 months, because you said you've done some soul searching. What really transpired that convinced you this is the moment to leave this party?
All right. My own analysis is this, that as I say, the EFF's position before the election was understandable because, quite frankly, around the table, the EFF was the only organization that had 10% in parliament, had a machinery. So it was not unreasonable for them to say, let's just collapse under the EFF. Yeah. Now the reality has changed. The people of South Africa have decided to bring about a different reality. So the people, if we had the same meeting tomorrow, the people who would be able to now say, well, we are the largest would be MK. And from that point of view, I am convinced, having looked at the situation carefully, that the quickest vehicle to get us to this much needed unity is MK. And there are various reasons for that, including not just this question of size, but also the fact that the MK is, in a way, much more well-disposed to the unity project. If you go to President Zuma's announcement on the 16th of December, probably the last two paragraphs of his statement, he says, I have been, so all this is not a secret. He says, I've spoken to about 10 organizations, and we are talking about a patriotic front, and we will revisit this, and so on and so on. So there was a whole rhetoric around this unity project, which, by the way, as I say, is my own passion in politics, because I sincerely believe, and I take this actually to extremes. I say that in the past 400 years, the reason why our enemies defeated us is because they've never had to face us as one force. Yeah. They'll fight you there and fight you there and fight you there. So it's something that I personally feel that it should be fought for.
Did the EFF not commit to working with the other parties in Parliament? I mean, remember that press briefing about the Progressive Caucus? And yes, some of them left to join the GNU. But the EFF did make a commitment then. And if I remember correctly, even when Julius Malema addressed the ground forces, he said, we will still work together. But that's where that relationship is going to end. So,
very true.
So to your point about the MK party being a vehicle that advances unity, the EFF didn't say we're cutting them off. Even when you were part of the EFF, you would have still worked with them in Parliament in matters where you share interest.
No, that might be so, Clement. But remember, in this, there's an issue of my subjective choice, or it might be right or wrong, but it's my own analysis as to which vehicle is going to get us to the destination the fastest. I might be completely wrong, the whole thing might collapse tomorrow, but that's not the point. The point is that I firmly believe and honestly believe that the organization with the bigger potential, let me put it this way. And I'm not just talking about size, now I'm talking about quality, not quantity, the policies and so on. That has the bigger chance of achieving that national unity, real, not the fake unity of the GNU, is the MK for various reasons, which I can go
We can get into that a little later on. You may have seen how people have been reacting to your decision now. Some people are calling you, this was a mole in the EFF. Some people are calling you deceitful, power mongerer, power hungry. You wanted to be the deputy president when you challenged it and you failed. And right now, the branches rejected you, and that is you now deciding I'm going to leave. Did you know about the people that left? Because Floyd Shivambu recently confirmed to weSizwe Mpofu Walsh on his podcast that there are some within the EFF that knew about my departure. Did you know about the people that left the EFF to go to the MK party?
No, I've heard that theory. I mean, the most ridiculous version of that theory I heard this afternoon was that this was all planned and there's some staggered departure. You go this week, I'll go that week. No, it's absolute nonsense. There's no conspiratorial weekly departures. People, these are adults, at least I'm one, who make up their own mind, and nobody, tries to have this kind. So put that aside. I told you last time I knew about Floyd's departure because he told me the day before, and I even told you that I even tried to convince him to say, why don't you wait for the NPA and so on. And he convinced me that would not have been a good idea. And I think I said to you that in retrospect, I agreed with him. And I do, because I think it's in fairness to the EFF, imagine if we all went to the NPA and then the EFF, does its own soul searching and so on and consolidates, and then boom, in February, you say you're leaving. I think it's better to allow the EFF to deal with whatever it has to deal with, to go into its NPA, elect a leadership that will respond to the outcomes of the elections and all sorts of things that have happened. Yeah. Because, Clement, and I want to say this really emphatically, for this dream of mine of unity, the ideal, I'm not saying it's going to happen, the ideal is that you have a strong EFF and a strong MK. And a strong PAC, before the PAC sold out, and a strong ATM, let's say, and maybe hopefully we can even win back some of those structures that are in the so-called GNU. But it's not something that's going to happen overnight. This is a vision which may come to fruition maybe in the 2029 elections, hopefully before, because as you say, we missed it, quote unquote, in the previous election.
Where does this leave your relationship with Julius Malema?
Well, there's, from my side, honestly, I don't see how it would affect the relationship. Obviously, it won't be the same because we're not in the same organization. But it had never been a relationship that was based on anything more than comradeship and a political relationship. So I don't think that if we meet, we're not going to greet each other or whatever. And I even think that when the storm has settled, we might sit and laugh about this. I mean, Julius, for example, him and I, when we, very ironically, when we went to Pulukwane for the conference, we always talk about how, because we're in different factions, if you like, or favored different sides.
Isn't it comradeship, though, to just alert him of the decision that you have taken? I mean, this is someone you've enjoyed a good political relationship with. You were the chairperson of this organization. Correct. You were there very early on as well. He found out through the media that you're quitting. Isn't it comradeship to say, yo, and I know earlier he said you've sent him messages inviting him to your daughter's birthday. He didn't respond. Could you not have sent an email or just a message and say, I see it's not going to be impossible for me to see you, but just note that this is a decision that I have made?
No, I think if there's something that would have been uncomradely is that to deal with something like this in an email that's so impersonal after a relationship like this. That's why I tried, Clement. I tried many times to have this meeting because I believed, as you correctly point out, that we needed to sit down, and, we've had many discussions like that, very difficult discussions at many times, and he knows. In fact, he jokingly said one day that I summoned him to my office, which is true, for some discussion, and we had the discussion, that's it. And I think he also revealed what happened before the previous NPA when he was saying to me, no, let me not stand against Floyd and so on. And I told him, no, I'm not going to do it. But all those were face-to-face discussions.
So he didn't want you to stand against Floyd?
At that time, yeah. He has told that story that he felt that, it's too early to have that kind of contest. And I basically disagreed with him. But as I say, the point I'm making is that I didn't send him an email about that. We had a meeting, we sat, we agreed to disagree, and I tried to do that. But I was not going to, if he was busy, he's busy. I don't think he maliciously did not want to have the meeting, but it just didn't happen. So, that's life. There's no Bible that says we must have that meeting.
Okay. Did you enjoy working with him, though?
Absolutely. I think Julius Malema is honestly one of the most brilliant politicians in this country. And I think that he's just a gifted politician. And I noticed that even when we were still in the youth league, and that's probably why I even joined the EFF. So I've been there for 11 years. We built it. All of us, we built it together, and it was blood and sweat. I have no regrets. If I had to do that for another 11 years, I'll do it again. Yeah. So it's not this is not a personal thing. There's a difference between this, what I'm doing now, to, for example, the way I left the ANC. Because when I left the ANC, I was completely disgruntled with the policies, with the direction it was taking. I was just feeling that, this thing has just lost it. So this is not that same kind of thing. I still believe that sometime in the future, there is going to be room for this coalescence of progressive forces. And that even includes the ANC, by the way. I think the right-wing elements within the ANC will hopefully drift away to the DA, and the true ANC people will be with us.
Yeah. Here's something that I always want to try to understand, Advocate, and this is not to say people are not allowed to change their minds, but I think it helps when there's some kind of explanation.
No, fair enough.
Your relationship with the former president has changed over time. I was watching an old clip earlier where you said, and I quote, Zuma has humiliated over 50 million South Africans for years now, over Nkandla, over state capture, all sorts of criminal activities. We won't nurse his feelings when he continues humiliating us, end quote. You clearly don't see him the same way now. So what has changed? Because you've moved from despising him.
And it's the same Zuma, yeah.
And that's the same man. And now, but he's being so revered by many of you, including Floyd, who has also uttered almost similar comments before about him.
Yes. Politics is something that maybe, I don't know how one can communicate this. There's a certain style in politics, of robustness, which is understood. So I can call you all sorts of things, and then we go out here and go and have a beer if you drink beer or whatever.
So politics is not about truth and honesty.
No, it's not dishonesty. You are a representative of a particular view, all right? And the nature of the beast is that I can't beat you up, so I must be as robust as possible to disagree with you. There's this guy who's Donald Trump's
Vance.
Vance, yeah. He was trying to explain this the other day, that look, because they do the same thing. They say, no, but you said Trump is the worst thing and he's a criminal and what. And, he explained what his own journey was with that particular experience. But that's how it works. It's a robust, it's much like what we do in court. Because in court, it's a robust thing, but some people even think after you've said all these things and what have you about your opponent from there, and then they get surprised that you actually can talk and have lunch together and so on. So it's part of a discipline which is a little bit similar. I mean, where I grew up, it was boxing. In boxing, we beat each other up and so on. And then in the end, when your nose is this side, you hug. Yeah, and the same guy who did that, yeah. So it's something like that. So there's former President Zuma is a very seasoned politician. So he always laughs when people come in this thing. But this one said this one said this. He laughs his lungs out.
So to be clear, you didn't mean all of what you said then at the time?
No. I don't mean.
You didn't mean it?
No, I'm not saying I didn't mean it. I meant it in the sense that...
In the context.
Because in the context was, for example, might have been that don't vote for him. So I meant don't vote for him because I didn't want people to vote for him in that particular context, yeah. Okay.
So what role do you want to play in the MK party?
I've been asked that question. Firstly, obviously, I'm not there for positions. If I was there for positions, even in the EFF, I was an ordinary member of the EFF. But I'll play whatever role really they might see fit. Even this role I played before the formalization of MK was something that I was very honored to do because former President Zuma trusted me with it. Obviously, you couldn't have trusted too many people with when this thing was still a hush-hush. And so, he might say, well, if he asked me to choose, I would say, let me just continue running with that project of patiently trying to bring, maybe, as I say, even win back maybe the UDM and the PAC from the GNU to come back to the fold. Because for some reason, I just happen to have a good relationship with most political leaders across the board. I'm able to speak to 10 political leaders of 10 parties, and they're able to trust me because I suppose it's because my agenda is much broader than the color of your T-shirt and that kind of thing. Yeah. So maybe if that is a strength, then I would like to work behind the scenes do that.
So you're moving from an organization that sort of had structure and, in a way, and I say this in inverted commas, it was quite democratic. You're moving into the MK party that has concentrated so much power in President Jacob Zuma's organization. I mean, their constitution says the president is responsible for the deployment, appointment, removal of all national officials, even members of the National High Command. The president also has the ultimate power to issue presidential decrees on any matter in the organization, including policy, which will be binding on all levels of the organization. Is that a democratic party?
Well, it is. You know, democracy is not, there's no standard formula for democracy. Do you know that everything you've read there is the same as what the president of South Africa's powers is? The constitution, the best constitution in the world, says that all executive power rests with the president, one person, okay? And that person then appoints a cabinet and so on to assist him or her. So is it democratic, our constitution? Some say it's the most democratic in the world. So the point I'm making is that the democracy is a relative thing. There's no one size fits all. And in the defense of the MK position on this, the way they explain it, for example, on the issue of an elective conference and so on, they say, look, we're at a formative stage. We don't want something that's going to divide us at this stage. And I think that's quite correct. As long as there are sufficient checks and balances. And I'm quite satisfied that the constitution of MK provides those checks and balances.
Like what?
Like there's something called the National High Command.
But he can fire or remove those people any day he wants.
But so can Cyril Ramaphosa hire and fire all the cabinet ministers.
But remember what the court said. Remember the DA took him to court on that, and the court said, yes, while it's your prerogative, in fact, it was the former President Jacob Zuma when he fired Pravin Gordhan. I don't know if you remember. The court said,
I don't.
You must still explain that reasoning.
You know,
so it's not just carte blanche.
Yes. But
and even with cabinet, there are discussions that happen. You take cabinet collective decision. The president can't just come and say, this is all I want.
Yes, but the MK constitution is exactly the same. In most places, it says the president, with the concurrence of the national officials, which is his quote-unquote cabinet, or it says with the national command, which is a bigger structure.
That's not how I read the constitution.
That's how I read it, and I happened to have read it quite closely.
Okay, because from what I saw, it was just directly talking about...
They did say he can just wake up and...
No, it says he can issue presidential decrees on any matter in the organization, including policy, which will be binding on all levels of the organization, whether it's the national officials, whether it's whatever central command team that they have, etc., etc.
You know, Clement, my view on this is the following. In a democracy, it's like a supermarket. So you'll look at that constitution as Clement of MK and say, no, I'll never be part of this. I'll look at it and I'll say I'll be part of this. Then, you know, that's what it is. You have, that's exactly why the IEC Act insists that before you are a registered party, you must have a constitution so that people can make that choice. And they will vote for you or not vote for you or whatever. If you come, I'm sure if you come with a constitution that says you can do some horrific things, unchecked and unbalanced, then nobody will join that thing.
Yeah. So the Constitution also wants to establish a parliamentary supremacy, which would mean that the Constitution would no longer be the supreme law of the country, meaning that the courts then can't even overturn decisions of Parliament, whether they are rational or not. And then I was thinking, if the GNU, for instance, uses its majority in Parliament to get the president to escape accountability, let's say on Pala, even if that would be an irrational decision, you would have to accept that because you are saying that you don't believe in constitutional supremacy, where even decisions of Parliament can be tested and their rationality can be tested by the courts.
No, you know, that debate is much more complex than that. Again, it goes back to this issue. Democracy, so you have countries like England, where they have a parliamentary supremacy. So they're not less democratic than us just because of a constitution. It's a choice, okay? Now, so there's a view, and that view must be listened to. I mean, the most infuriating thing for me is to be lectured by people like the DA, who, those people who are killing us when we wanted to bring in a democratic constitution. And now suddenly they are these super constitutionalists. That's not true. So when it suited them, parliamentary sovereignty was great because it was suppressing black people. So the point about parliamentary sovereignty, what you can say in favor of it, is that it best expresses the will of the people. In other words, and even has a constituency-based system. There are people who have said that we should have that. In other words, the elected representatives of the people have the final say. In a constitutional democracy, you have to sacrifice because there's no perfect system. Now, some people are also appalled by the fact that, for example, something that happened recently, that you can have 20 million people voting, and then they have 400 representatives, and they take a decision, and 11 people unelected by anybody overrule that, basically.
Basing it on the Constitution.
Yes, basing it on the Constitution, fair enough, but basing it also on their proclivities, because you might put another 11 people and find that they have a different view. So that might scare certain people in as much as it might scare others who say, well, let's operate without a constitution altogether. So it's all about finding what is good for your own country. I believe that I'm somewhere in between in this debate, because I believe that even if you had a parliamentary sovereignty, you shouldn't rule out sometime in the future saying, look, maybe now we can shift to another. But this dogmatic thing of saying, you know, it's this or that, and this is good, this is bad, is just naive and based on ignorance of the complexities of the different models of democracies. And what South Africa needs now might well be a system where maybe there are referendums on certain questions, and there's more emphasis on, as I said, constituencies. There's more emphasis on the elected representatives. That doesn't mean you close down the courts, obviously. Even under apartheid, the courts were there, and they still had checks and balances over the executive. I mean, I know when I was a detainee, we were able to go to court and challenge. You know, the lawyers were able to find gaps to challenge certain executive actions.
Okay. At the time that you decided to leave the organization, I'm hoping you can share with us what the mood was like in the organization, because they're preparing, that's the EFF, preparing for its NPA. And Julius Malema tweeted earlier after your announcement that, and I quote, "Only 2 more of your favorites remain and the list will be finalized. They sing beautifully and are always willing to pose for pictures and sign roll calls, but remember their souls are long gone. To prevent any potential hurt, it's crucial to heed the guidance of the leadership. We remain standing and are not going anywhere under a criminal syndicate." And obviously, as expected, people are making all sorts of suggestions about who he is referring to, who he is not referring to. What was your sense at the time of leaving the organization? And I mean in terms of how people are feeling ahead of the conference. Are they feeling free to challenge particular positions? Are people scared to speak out about the kind of candidates they would like to support? What are your reflections?
Yeah, you know, Clement, if I can take it one step back. You know, when I was saying that this political conjuncture we're in now is something that I don't think many people have had time to actually reflect on it. This is like a whole different country or universe that has happened since the 29th of May. You know, the ANC pretends that nothing has happened, you know, 40% is just one of those things. No, it's a huge thing. It's a monumental, gigantic thing that has happened. And therefore, there's no organization, political organization, that has remained unaffected by it, whether it's MK, the EFF, the PAC, or whoever. And therefore, I think in fairness, each organization, if actually I was the president of each of those organizations, would have had to call a conference and say, how do we actually deal with this new situation? Even the DA, everyone, because it has changed for everybody. So in that sense, the EFF is in a lucky position because by coincidence, its conference is this year. So it will probably be the first one off the blocks to contemplate this moment, I hope, and reflect on what it means and all the developments that have happened since May, including the departures and all those things, and map out a way to then play in this space, because this is a completely different space than what was in April of this year. So to answer your question more directly, I'm not in touch with every branch, but I'm hoping that there is that sense of anticipation, of knowing how big, that this is not just another conference. The leadership you're going to elect there, everything you're going to do must speak to this particular political moment. Otherwise, you're going to be found wanting, and you'll pay a huge price politically if you don't read this moment properly.
But are people brave enough? What's your sense of the mood? Are they brave enough to come up and stand their ground and say, this is what we think is the leadership that is needed?
Yes, I do. And by the way, just to go back to something we discussed earlier, one of the reasons why I stood for the deputy presidency last time was exactly to instill that culture. And I explained this even to the president of the EFF. I said, look, I'm not even campaigning. I'm not... quite frankly, I don't know what I would have done if I was elected as the deputy president at that point. But I was making a point for people to know that it's fine. You can stand against Floyd, and the following day you sitting with him in Soweto, which is what actually happened, and having a drink. So that's at that level. The second level, sorry, before you break, is that I'm quite optimistic because I can tell you as a former leader of the EFF, there were many times where we went to some province and maybe we had a preference of whatever, and the people voted the other way and nothing happened to them. So hopefully that culture is not something where people think that they're going to be killed if they have a different view.
What do you think of Mbuyiseni Ndlozi? You've observed him, you've worked with him. Is he the kind of person who would be a good leader? Part of the leadership of the EFF? Yeah,
he is. He's always been part of the leadership of the EFF. And he's a great leader. And as our top 6 right now is made up of great leaders. So the organization might decide maybe to return all of them. But if they are going to be changed, well, it's top 5 now because Floyd left. So, but if there are going to be any major changes apart from filling that position of deputy president, then I'm sure that there are many people across the organization who are up to that task. But as I say, I hope and pray that there will be a thorough analysis, that this is not business as usual. There's a completely new, different...
I want to just take a few tweets before, as we wrap up this conversation. Thomas on Twitter says, Clement, politics is a dirty game. Sometimes we lose respect for people we adored, and unfortunately to them, it's just politics. Good luck to him, and I believe the coming together of the black parties will be a big step towards another democracy milestone, not working apart.
Good.
That's what Thomas says there. Ndiko says, in fact, we're not shocked. I think Advocate Mpofu has been planning his exit from the EFF, and the election results cemented his wish. Techi says, it was inevitable. The question is, what took him so long? Baloyi says, EFF members are not loyal to their party. Money, protection, moves politicians. I'm not surprised. Henny says, it was a good decision. A historical move. Oriel says the disastrous election results by the EFF is because of such comrades who were eating the EFF from within. Thank you so much for all of your tweets. Advocate, thanks to you as well for joining us this evening. All the best in your new party.
It's a pleasure. The funny thing about politics is that all those people might all be right, even the ones who are, you never know. It's called the struggle exactly because we don't know what the future holds. So for the best wishes, thank you. And watch this space. I think we're going to have some serious developments before the next election cycle.
Looking forward to that. After the break, the ANC's first Deputy Secretary General, Nomvula Mokonyane. Stay with us. Welcome back. Now, ANC Secretary General Fikile Mbalula has expressed his frustration, challenging the DA to exit the Government of National Unity if they want to. The statement comes in response to remarks made by DA Federal Council Chair Helen Zille, who claimed that ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa is dependent on the DA for protection against the EFF and the MK party. The ANC's first Deputy Secretary General, Nomvula Mokonyane, joins me now in studio. Thank you so much for making time for us.
Thank you, Clement, and thanks for inviting us.
So I want to start with this sort of ultimatum that Fikile Mbalula makes to the DA. Just leave now if you want to and stop this disrespect. I mean, it's been going on for the longest time now. Why is the GNU struggling to tame Helen Zille?
We can't change Helen Zille for who she is. Not committed to anything that helps to take South Africa forward. Very self-centered and wanting to disrupt an agenda where there's now an agreement about the 3 priorities as adopted by the South African cabinet. And here today, because she's at pains to impress his or her own handlers and those that he influences about why we have refused to be in coalition solely with the DA.
Okay, are these her views or are these the views of the Democratic Alliance?
Oh, well, up until now, we believe that these are views of the lady herself, and unless otherwise the Democratic Alliance actually states otherwise. But we can't also afford to have a Democratic Alliance that speaks in tongues.
Yeah, and you guys are part of a GNU. Why can't you call a meeting between the political parties and say to each other, we can't be doing these things of speaking publicly against each other like this? It doesn't help, especially because you have seen through the polls that a lot of South Africans are actually in support of this GNU. Well, from what the president said, quoting some of the polls. When you have these tit for tat and public statements...
This GNU, Clement, the mistake that we see is that many people assume this Government of National Unity is dependent on the Democratic Alliance. It's not. You have 9 other political parties represented in Parliament who constitute the Government of National Unity. They can go, the door is open, and they can also opt to remain, but they must remain understanding that they are not the deal makers, as she assumes. They are not the ones who are in coalition with the African National Congress.
You're going to be left vulnerable in Parliament.
In fact, it may actually be the opposite. It may actually be the opposite, because it would also show that, unlike what other people are saying, we are not married. We've never said till death do us apart. We are in a relationship that has got 3 priorities coming out of the statement of intent, that has got 6 priorities, and that is all that brings us together. We have been in constant contact with all parties that are part of the National Assembly of South Africa. Others opted out because of what they were putting as a demand. And therefore, we can't be held back because of Helen Zille on his escapades goes about raising issues. And the SG is correct. If she is actually not comfortable, she must actually get off that seat and go.
When you look at the numbers, though, if the DA leaves the GNU and there's a motion of no confidence against the president and the DA votes together with the other parties, that's the end.
Remember, we're not married to be in any position irrespective of what happens in Parliament. There's persuasion, there's engagements, and so forth. And therefore, whatever that the DA wants to do, South Africans must see them for who they are. We saw them just a few days ago clad in the old apartheid flag at the Voortrekker Hoogte, a symbol of separate development of fascism in the South African context, and them actually wanting to preserve and want to assume that the only language in South Africa is Afrikaans, when the Bella Act has got nothing to do with the preservation of Afrikaans, but it is about nation building, it is about access, it is about diversity.
And yet this is the same party that does the ANC. You thought, let's actually work with them, even with those views they have, even with the ideological positioning there.
And yet this is the party amongst many parties. It's not the only party. And I think that's what must also come to your own appreciation. This is not the only party. It's a party amongst many parties, and we didn't even say, let us agree. We have an agreement with 9 parties. We don't have an agreement with the DA alone. Every party was engaged in its own, and every party engaged with us and signed. There's no GNU agreement signed by all parties together. Every party signed with the African National Congress. That's why the ANC can boldly say, you can't disrupt a cause, and if you believe this cause doesn't work for you, you can't go about also and undermine a leader of a party that has actually come out openly and said, let us engage, and say, no, we're doing this thing because business said that. And we have a precedent now because the ANC was very firm that the president of the ANC shall be the president of the country. I think it's silly, and it's silly of the DA, but it's also incumbent upon us, South Africa, that we must impress upon the DA that we need to move on and deal with those priorities that the National Cabinet had adopted. Otherwise, they must leave. There are many others who still want to come in, and we're also not short of capable individuals and parties sitting in Parliament, or even remaining with those that have signed the statement of intent.
There were suggestions that were made in the past of, even by Helen Zille, something along the lines of, destroy the ANC from within, so to speak. And I'm just paraphrasing here. I mean, that's probably what's happening right now, because you are ending up fighting with each other. You've got Fikile Mbalula saying things, Panyaza Lesufi saying something else, then you call them into a meeting.
No, Clement. Again, there's no Panyaza on one side, there's no Fikile on another side. There's one message of the ANC. But we all are very, very annoyed and get irritated when some people want to interfere into the business of the African National Congress. We'll refuse a situation where Panyaza is being attacked and is being projected as somebody who speaks outside of what is the mandate of the ANC. We detest racism. Panyaza is known to be outspoken on racism. We detest those who undermine the organization. The SG has the responsibility to say that. 3, we also refuse to be put as those that have sold out, because even those that are part of us who are now saying there's a sellout position in the African National Congress, they were the ones who said go out and defend and ensure that you defend being in power, ensure that you come with that would help us move on. So it is incorrect to say we are incoherent in our approach.
I want to talk about Spaza shops because we're running out of time.
You took my time with that.
Yeah. Well, you're here now. So the Spaza shops, Nomvula, I really think that the way government has handled it could have been much better. There are so many families out there that feel failed by the approach government has taken. There are so many kids that have had to die before even a state of emergency is declared. So many kids that had to die before the ministers who are in portfolios that can help address the situation called a collective press briefing. What is your assessment as the ANC on how government and your deployees there have dealt with this crisis? Because it hasn't been treated as a crisis so far.
We are also, firstly, as the organization, wish to convey our sincere condolences to the families. This could have been avoided. It shouldn't have happened. And what does that mean? It means we needed to have government that enforces the bylaws. We needed to have government that closes everything that is illegal and make people to present themselves and demonstrate that they have credible and qualified documents, acceptable documents that gives them legitimacy to exist. We needed to talk to our own South Africans as well, that no person can travel from a country and come and arrive in 2983 Sango Street in Kagiso and open a Spaza shop without actually complying. And one of the things that we have been able to do now is the ANC. We've called all our ministers. There's now an IMC. The National Minister of COCTA has now gazetted a bylaw that we must deal with. But in this case of emergency, let's go and shut down everything that is illegal.
But how many people had to die for all of these? Because these are great, right? That's the agency with which government needs to operate. How many kids had to die for you to form this IMC, for this bylaw to be gazetted?
It didn't need even one person to die. It just didn't need that. All of us were saying it is a demonstration of many things that are linked to this situation. The inactiveness of government and the delay to respond, our own communities being unable to make sure that they don't harbor criminals and people who are illegal in our country, and of importance, the absence of an integrated approach. One thing that we also realize is that if you have environmental health now being devolved to local authorities, and it is no longer a responsibility of health or of central government, that is why you have this challenge now that we're told that there are no health inspectors and stuff. That law that Gauteng has passed about township economy, we have called upon those comrades in Gauteng to say, make that Gauteng township economy act to become something that works in terms of resourcing, in terms of budgeting, but also in terms of making our communities to understand that there is no point of you just collecting rent from these people and you keeping quiet. But the immediate thing, just like an illegal tavern, let's close an illegal Spaza shop.
Yeah, and unfortunately this is happening after so many kids have died. Is it enough? So is it enough for the communities that are affected that, well, we're doing something now?
Let's work together as communities, Clement. And I don't want to veer to where you want to be. Let me finish. You want to apportion blame. This is a time where we need unity of South Africans. Let's not allow, either in government, in the communities, all these foreigners and those that are undocumented, and particularly those that are trading in my yard, in my own house, and those that have let their own old general dealer shops and allowing them. Let's deal with the wholesalers and everybody.
Yeah, I just think accountability is also important. There's nothing wrong with
of course,
the party or government saying, we have failed here, we could have done better. It's not enough to say we're doing things right now.
It's not enough to just say, let's look for somebody to blame. It is important to say what are the lessons learned, and where there's been faults in terms of absence of enforcement of bylaws, somebody must take responsibility. Where there is absence around enforcement, and you in your own home harboring people who are now trading in your yard, you must know that it is illegal. What I refuse to do is, again, you going on a witch hunt to apportion blame on one side. South Africa needs everybody to deal with this. We must deal with our porous borders. We must deal with undocumented people. We must deal with us harboring all these shenanigans. We must go to the wholesalers. We must deal with the distributors. This needs a coherent approach, and we're quite committed. Just today, the SG and myself, we have also engaged with our own branches of the ANC and our ward councillors to say, in your ward, give us the address and the street where there is an illegal Spaza shop, so that then we massify intervention and avoid what has happened, which is very unfortunate.
Nomvula Mokonyane, the ANC's first Deputy Secretary General, thank you so much for making time for us on Face the Nation tonight. Thanks to you for watching the Thursday edition of Face the Nation. We'll be back on Tuesday at 8 p.m. Have a good evening. Cheers.